This video is just to talk to you briefly about your homework assignment for Module 3. You're being asked to do a web page, a very simple web page. You'll do two files or two documents. You'll do an HTML document and you will name it index.html. And then you will do a document that you will name whatever you want to name it, .css. I have suggested you might want to name it your name. So like mine could be named jenniferwilliams.css. But it doesn't really matter as long as it has a .css. And it is imperative though that the HTML file be named index.html. That's what we name our opening, the opening page file in a website. Now, you have slides in your presentation, in your PowerPoint, that give you examples. You're going to have two slides where you have examples of an HTML file. If you compare those two slides, you're going to find that they are identical. And I believe I wrote for you actually in slide 18, I believe it is the one that has the it's kind of the final version. There is one line difference in slide 18. There is a previous slide of the HTML file that is exactly like slide 18. The difference is that slide 18 calls the CSS file. So that's why I'm calling your attention to slide 18. All slide 18 is that earlier slide with one addition. You also have a slide 14, I believe it is, that is a CSS file. Now the first thing I need to tell you is that you can simply reproduce both of those slides. Reproduce that HTML file that's on slide 18 and name it index.html. Reproduce that CSS file that's on slide 14 and name it something.css. And as long as they're both in the same folder, when you click on the HTML file, double click, it'll open up in a browser and voila, you'll see whatever that web page is that you've just created. And it's fine. If all you do is repeat what's on those slides, you can do that. Now, I hope you're going to be a little curious and you're going to experiment a little bit. Where you're really going to make the changes, there are a few things on there, like those first couple of lines on the HTML file where I said, you know, that doc type tag, and then that HTML language equals English, that tag, I said, and then there's some header information there. That stuff is just technical stuff that needs to be there. But where you would want to experiment is in the body. And you have the tag that says it's the little rooftops with the word body in it. That's where that body begins. And then that body continues until you see the same command. However, it'll have a slash in front of the body. And that's how we open and close a section. We have the body, and then we have slash body to close it. And they are encapsulated in the little rooftops. And it is in between, you know, the opening and the closing command. What you're telling the browser is that everything between these two tags is the body. And so that's where you would want to maybe write some sentences, or if you're going to pretend your web page is selling lemonade and you want to say lemonade, large is 25 cents and small as a dime. Or if you, whatever you want your web page to say. It doesn't have to be commercial. It can just, it can be a personal. It can be something about you. It can be, I don't care what you say. But I really wish you would actually put something in that body. And it would be nice if you would, maybe look at the examples that I've put up there and see where I've stretched just a little bit and try to incorporate some of that. But again, if all you do is reproduce it, as long as it opens up and you've got something that opens up, then you will have completed the assignment. I've told you on the paper that, and so what you're going to find on Blackboard, you're going to first, those samples are in your PowerPoint slides. So slide 14 and 18, I believe it is, that are the two criticals. Slide 14, I believe, is an example of a CSS file that would work, and slide 18 is an example of the HTML file that would work. The only thing that you would have to do different, the HTML file makes reference to the CSS file. And if you want your HTML file to read your CSS file, and we do, you're going to have to put the name of yours, whatever you've named your CSS file. In that particular slide, I think it says master.css, and that's where you would substitute master.css. You would put jenniferwilliams.css if that's what you had named your CSS file. Okay? Now, I've said you can work together in pairs. This is an online class. That's probably not going to work very well, but you can email and find yourself a partner or do whatever you want to do. I don't mind you working together is the bottom line. I think it'll probably be more convenient for you to do it individually, but I do allow it to be done in pairs in the classroom. Basically, what I'm going to put up for you is kind of a lengthy assignment page. All this is saying is create two files, an HTML file and a CSS file. But I've given you very specific directions. Now, how do I create that file? You've said I can go to this slide and just type in exactly what's there. Where do I type this in? Well, any text editor, but let me just tell you what I would do. There are text editors, and then there are smart text editors. A smart text editor looks a little busier up on the menu bar, but it knows what you're trying to do. So like in Word, when you misspell something, it'll highlight it or underline it, or the little red squigglies, this isn't a good sentence. A smart editor will do that. It will kind of call your attention to an area, and it'll suggest there's something wrong here. You'll see colors and things so a smart editor will kind of, it'll kind of give you some hints. Because even if you're going to copy exactly what you see on that page, you're going to find out real quickly that if you put a space in the wrong, or you forgot the semicolon or whatever, it can make a huge difference. So if you opened a brace or you opened a tag and didn't close it, or you opened a body and you never closed the body, it would kind of prompt you. That's why I would suggest using. Another reason I would suggest using a smart editor is because a smart editor will allow you to pick the type of file. So you can just give it the name just like you would in Word. If you want to, history paper, you don't have to say .doc. No, because all you have to do is say history paper, and it knows it's a Word document. It'll do that extension for you. So if you use the smart editor that I'm going to suggest you use, then when you're ready to name your file, you'll name your HTML file, you'll name it index, and then you'll click on the little drop down box to say I want it to be, and there's a long list of types. I want it to be the HTML type. So, that's simple if you use. And likewise, you can name your cascading style sheet and click drop down and say I want it to be a CSS file or a cascading style sheet file. Now, what is a smart editor? Well, you can download to any machine free, quickly, easily, a no-brainer, a smart editor called Notepad++. And what you do is Google it, and the plus, I'm talking the plus sign. Now, if you look at this paper I've posted, you'll see that. It's Notepad++. You do not spell out the word. I spelled it out in one place just so you would hear what I'm saying, but you want to say notepad plus sign, and it's free, it's easy, and you can download it and then open it, and you just open it to a blank page and you take off typing, and when you're finished you say file save, or save as, you name it index, and then you drop down the box to choose it to be an HTML file, and it's that simple. And now when you go to actually, and then when you click on that file, double click on that file in your directory, it'll open in a browser if you've got it done right. So what I've shared with you on these and again, I've already told you in the lecture why we do a CSS file. You could put all of that command on every page, but that would be foolish, and it would be inefficient, and it would be very inflexible. And so what we do is we write the formatting once, and then and if we want to have different formatting for certain pages, we write more than one formatting file. But the bottom line is we have these CSS files, or a file, or more files, whatever, and then whatever we want that page to look like. We want this page to be blue, let me call in this CSS file, let me call in that CSS file. So you're going to write the CSS file and then of course call it into the HTML file. And so I tell you here about opening the Smart Editor, and I'm also putting up these direction files, and then I'm also putting up 3 other files for you. And one of those is my file named index, because I just threw together a quick one for you. And I think it's classroom rules, I just made something up and threw it together. And it's pretty simple, and it'll be interesting for you to compare that to the one you see on slide 18, and you're going to see that mine looks very much the same, except in my body I've kind of added some things. You're going to see where I used, and I've told you in this, but you're going to see where I used, for example, line breaks, with the BR for break, BR encapsulated, and that's to say I want this to be on another line, I've explained all of that in this directions document. The reason I have 3 files for you, I have my index file and I have my CSS file. And when you click on when you look at these, you'll see, for example, that one of my headings is blue, one of them's red. Well, look at the CSS file and see why you think it's that way. You'll see where in my CSS file I said I want this heading to be this color, I want this heading to be a different color, and you'll see why the lines break where they break, because that's where I told them to break. So that's what I really want you to do. The reason I've put my example up there for you is you can look at what my web page looks like and what my CSS file says, and you can understand what's going on. Now, I've got 3 files for you. I've got the index file, and then I've got the CSS file. But you can't see the code in the index file, because when you click on it, it's going to open in a browser. You're going to see the web page. You're not going to see the code. So I have also put a Word file up there for you and I've got notes on mine, but this is what it looks like. This is what my code looks like. And I'm sorry, I just don't get very good resolution here but anyway, you're going to see this. You're going to see I started out with that doc type and that language English, and then down in here you're going to see my body, and you're going to see, if you look at this Word file, you're going to see what's in my body, and you're going to see that I've got these line breaks out here and so forth. So this document's out there, and it's a Word document, and this is the actual code that is my HTML document. Then you're going to see the index. This is the index file, but it's written in a Word document, so it will not execute. So when you click on it, it will not display the word. You know, this is what I wrote. And then when you click on my index file, you're going to see how this has produced that. And then this is out there as my CSS file. And my CSS file is much shorter, and basically you're just going to see where I, did some font families and I aligned the text, and you're going to see where I use different colors in a couple of areas. And so now let me back up and say this again. What I want you to do is look at slides 14 and 18 and try to pretty much duplicate those. On slide 18, I would like for you to do something a little different in the body. I'd like for you to put some content there to show me that this is your web page. It really says something, and I don't care what it says. And then likewise on 14, if you want to use the same CSS, if you just want to use that CSS file, not change any colors or do anything different, it'll be more interesting if you experiment a little bit. What is my goal here? My goal here is for you to understand a little bit about how an HTML file gets developed and how we use then a style sheet to impact that HTML file. If you have any problems with this, you need to email me, you need to text me, you need to call me, whatever you need to do. This is not going to be difficult. As some of you may have done this before, and it's a no-brainer. There is nothing difficult about this, but I'm just telling you, when you start doing it, if you're like me, you'll make some errors. Just if you're just going to type in what's there, you're going to make some errors. But I think just in looking at those slides, and then in looking at what I did and how it appears, you're going to learn. You're going to get, you're going to begin to be able to say, oh, I see why that's red, I see why that's blue. And that's really what I'm after, that you just want to see you do a very simple HTML file and a very simple CSS file. Now you do have a submission point there, and so at that submission point you will attach both files. You will attach them one at a time. You will attach both files at that submission point, and you will of course do that by your deadline. And if you will read this instruction sheet in its entirety, and I give you some pointers here on some of the things I did, like the page break and the paragraph and some of those. And so I think I've given you lots of information here. I think the only point of confusion you're going to have is why am I calling that CSS into the HTML? That's the thing that usually bothers students. But just read what I've written and it'll make sense to you, I think, and let me know if you need help.